you've attacked this institution many, many times, most recently in a podcast, which we've just heard this week. And yet you want to retain all of the perks and privileges of being in that institution, which is, of course, the titles. Because I suppose if they are just Harry and Meghan Sussex, because that is her name, she's right to say she's not a Markle anymore. When you marry, most people take their husband's name, and that's what she's done. But she doesn't need to be using the HRH title. She doesn't really need to be using the Duchess of Sussex. But of course, that sets her aside from, everyone else, including top-list, A-list Hollywood celebrities.
Well, I think this is the point. I think you hit the nail on the head here, Mark. If you were receiving emails or receiving contact from a potential client, and if it was, I suppose we do know who Meghan Markle is, we do know who Meghan Sussex is, but once something comes through and it says you're HRH, surely that, and you're selling yourself as that kind of person, surely that has much more weight if you were looking for clients. Really.
Of course it adds weight, and she knows it adds weight, and it gives that sort of subliminal aura that, she, still has links, with the British royal family, which is a very, very, very powerful brand globally, particularly in America. And in fact, if you are disconnected from that, of course, you lose your social capital, you lose your weight in terms of sort of some of these deals that she's trying to do. And what you said, and I'm sure she is using that in when it's important, when she has to land something, to remind the people, who, the power that she possibly has. This is a power game. And, no more than America, where, that status is so important, because without that status, she just is another sort of B-lister in a continent absolutely populated with celebrities.
They left the royal family to find freedom, but somehow Meghan and Harry can't stop clinging to everything they supposedly walked away from titles to treatment. From status to perks, they want it all. And while they attack the monarchy with interviews and books, they still expect royal privileges to follow them across the Atlantic. It's hypocrisy at its finest, and the cracks in their independent narrative are starting to show. Remember their grand announcement back in 2020? Financial independence, private life, a fresh start. But what did we get instead? A Netflix docuseries, a Spotify deal, and a book filled with royal secrets, all monetising their connection to the very institution they rejected. For people who claim to despise royal life, they've made sure their entire brand depends on it. They walked away from the crown, but not the comfort that came with it. Since their departure, Meghan and Harry have launched one grievance after another, from family feuds to fabricated slights. No royal moment is safe from their public dissection, but here's the contradiction: they want to be free of the monarchy while demanding the same privileges it offered. Private security, funded titles for their children, expected, invitations to royal events, desired. They want the perks without the responsibility, the fame without the duty. Meghan has spent years shaping an image of the modern Duchess, strong, outspoken, and progressive, but behind the glossy PR campaigns lies a simple truth: she still relies heavily on her royal identity to stay relevant. Her every project, podcast, and public appearance somehow circles back to the one thing she claims to have escaped: the royal family. Without that connection, would Meghan Markle still command global attention? Or would her Hollywood sparkle have faded long ago? And then, there's Harry, the once-loved soldier, the cheeky royal adored for his charm, now reduced to a supporting role in Meghan's Hollywood storyline.
Think that maybe she's tarnishing the title in any way, using it whether privately or not?
I don't think she's tarnishing the title. I think, if anything, she's sort of, for anybody looking at this and being, let's say, a critical friend, you would say, look, if this was a mistake, telegraph that as a mistake. But to a certain extent, it plays up, as Katie said, the hypocrisy that surrounds it. And what people need now when you're looking at a brand is honesty. People look for that reality of what that brand really is. And there's a sort of quasi-nature. On one hand, you're attacking the institution, you're crying into your pillow. And the next thing, you are forgetting all that emotion you've thrown in, and you're using a title. So yeah, I think it tarnishes for her, it tarnishes a brand, and it shows how far she is away, and they are away, of being something that is self-determined, which I think which should be important for them. And it shows just how they still have to be linked to the royal family to be relevant.
Katie, is there a danger of slippage? So it's 5 years, over 5 years now, since they sat down at Sandringham, the Queen was there, and it was all agreed, and it was all signed off that they couldn't use their HRH title. Is there a danger now, the passing of Her Majesty late Queen Elizabeth, that the Sussexes could maybe slip and veer into areas where they think it's now safe because nobody is watching?
Yes, I think so. And I think it was of course, they had the right to use the Prince and Princess title for their children when Charles became king as Prince and Princess, but they didn't have to use those titles. They've chosen to do that. She's chosen to use the HRH title. When I think back to some of the tours they've done, Nigeria, which, if you didn't know it wasn't an official royal tour, I mean, it kind of looked like one from where we were standing in terms of the coverage it got and everything else. So I think, I think this is a couple that have shown that they will push those parameters as much as they can. And I think at the palace there is a sense that people have to watch, because you sort of give them the loaf and they'll take the entire bakery. And I think there is that sense about them that they will, as Mark says, sort of not have any qualms about knocking the institution, having a crack at the establishment. They want to hold on to everything else it gives them, and I think at the palace they will be wary of that.
I think they'll be watching.
Yes, I do. I think they'll be watching.
That they will be looking at taking any action?
Not over this, because I think it's hard for them to take action over this because it was private correspondence, and who knows whether Meghan was aware that it was going to be put out into the public domain. But I think they will be watching, because I think if she's using that title in the commercial world in any way, then I think the palace will have a problem with it.
How do you think that? Sorry, Mark.
No, I think the palace would be looking at this and thinking, as long as you're not using it commercially, if you're making a mistake or using this privately, it undermines what they're setting up. Actually, it's a real sign of weakness, and I think it's very difficult sitting in the sort of media room or the press office of the palace, because you have good days, bad days, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But you're looking at this and saying this erodes their brand, in my estimation. And I think that constant needs to be identified. They'll say, right, let's keep an eye on it, as Katie said, on the commercial side. But the more you go ahead with this you diminish your impact.
Well, the late Queen was a stickler for the rules. I mean, she removed HRH titles from Princess Diana and Sarah Ferguson, if my memory serves me correct.
Yeah, when they were divorced.
I mean, she was a stickler for rules. She understood the meaning behind the honours. But why is it so important, Katie, that we adhere to the actual honour, the naming and the honour system that we have with our royals? Because,
very simply, Matt, because those titles are weighted in history and heritage, and they're hugely important. Which is why they're using them. Because
they can't end up becoming a gimmick, really, can they?
No,
they can't be just thrown away or thrown around like this.
No, they need to be protected. Yeah, they absolutely have to be protected.
Right. And you know Harry quite well. Just finally on this point, do you think he would have any concerns about his wife using the HRH title?
I really don't know. I mean, for whatever Harry's been through and however much he resents the institution, I do think it's still an institution and establishment that he has a respect for, just because that's part of his DNA. And I'm reminded of that clip in the Netflix docuseries when Meghan mock curtsied, and he looked absolutely appalled at that. I mean, clearly he knows what his wife's stationery looks like, right? Because it's sitting on her desk. And I'm assuming that he, privately, possibly he uses that HRH title as well. But I think both of them just need to be mindful of it. I think, the palace has stood back and tolerated a lot. They've been incredibly patient with this couple, but I think they just have to be careful.
Well, I think this is definitely one to watch. I think this is something to be aware of, and I'll be keeping an eye on it.
Insiders whisper that Harry feels torn. He wants the royal respect, but not the royal responsibility. He wants the spotlight, but not the scrutiny, and as he continues to criticize his family, he forgets that his fame exists because of them. Without the royal name, there's no platform. Without the crown, there's no audience. Royal insiders say it best: Meghan and Harry want to live like royals. Without doing the work of royals, they crave recognition but reject obligation. That's the paradox, a couple who preaches independence while constantly cashing in on the institution they left behind. Their endless interviews, documentaries, and speeches all share one theme: we're victims. But to the public, it now sounds like an excuse, a desperate bid to stay relevant as their royal influence fades. They brand themselves as modern, brave, and outspoken, but the world sees something else: entitlement. When you attack the monarchy yet still use royal titles on your business ventures, that's not empowerment, that's exploitation. Even supporters are starting to question their motives. Are they fighting for change or for attention? Because at this point, it's hard to tell the difference. They said they wanted privacy, they said they wanted peace, yet every move they make screams the opposite. Meghan and Harry's story could have been one of reinvention, a new chapter of independence and integrity. Instead, it's become a tale of contradictions where the pursuit of freedom looks a lot like the pursuit of fame. And as the royal family moves forward, one truth remains clear: you can't attack the crown while still demanding its privileges.
The fact it comes back again, he loves his wife.
Oh, yeah.
And we all know that sometimes that can be blind. But can you imagine the story if his private correspondence showed that he was using a HRH title? What would the lens be on that? Be a completely different perspective. Well, because it shows just how much he needs what he's been conditioned, what Katie said in his DNA. That's what he's been bred for service. And that again shows just that sort of schism that must be so painful for him.
It's really complicated. And I think it's going to go on and on. This issue, I think, with the HRH.
Keeps on giving. A story that keeps on giving, Matt.
Yeah, I know. Until a decision, maybe one day, if they get removed or they do something so bad that William or the King says you can't have these titles anymore.
Well, he's a blood prince. I mean, that title belongs to him. They can't actually strip him of that. But you know, they did sort of agree not to use it, and I think it's been contentious. And as you say, it's something I think that's going to rattle on.